Monsterquest.
Monsterquest.
Let's start.
Witnesses around the world report seeing monsters. Are they real or imaginary? Science searches for answers on Monsterquest.
Real or imaginary? Science. Or whatever he says.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So, you may remember the show from the big purple eye that would appear. That was their
Changed
general...
it to the green eye over time.
How could they do that? Purple
That's
eye is
like,
obviously better.
Back in my day, Monsterquest had a purple eye.
Yeah.
They changed it from like an ape eye to like a lizard eye. Like
Well, see, the purple eye, it could be Bigfoot or it could be a black dog. It could be anything, you know.
Werewolf.
Yeah,
werewolf episode.
Yeah. So basically, the show is they take mostly American, but sometimes international monster stories.
When the budget allows international.
Yeah. And then what the show does is it picks a couple lucky archaeologists whose name got drawn from a hat, and it sends them on a field trip. They get some nice camera equipment. They get to meet a local kooky guy, and they go on a little field trip.
They meet an elderly person who's like always above 56 years old. Yeah. And it's like, oh, hello.
So our first episode is Champ, which is basically the Loch Ness monster of North America, I suppose.
Lake Champlain.
Yeah.
I'm saying in Vermont.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders monster.
Yeah,
that's all I know about Vermont is Bernie Sanders.
I'm once again asking you for a clear photograph. So yeah, they go through the first sightings. They use the phrase that I actually wrote down because it's so beautiful. Ooh. According to one version of history.
What?
Yeah,
that's amazing. I missed that.
I was like, well, what a great sentence.
Well, I thought so. Here, I wrote this down in my notes. I called it the proto-ancient aliens.
Yeah, definitely.
I felt like this was I was surprised how balanced it was. But you could see the seeds of what was to come in the History Channel. You could see that eventually they would get rid of the skeptic interviews and just focus entirely on the sort of kooky people.
Yeah, so like basically you have sightings from a long time ago, kind of.
Mm-hmm. You know, they always use something like a Spanish explorer in 1611 or something.
So, you know, there's sightings, but I mean, what can you make of those as evidence, right? Like, if somebody in the 1700s or 1800s is like, oh, I was on this lake and I saw a large creature, you know, we're not saying they didn't see something in the water, but what does that help us? It doesn't really get us anywhere.
Yeah.
You know,
well, they used Samuel de Champlain's like first sighting. And if you actually look back, then they fixed themselves later on the episode. I took notes and I was like, that's wrong. But then they corrected themselves. So the Champ origin story is that this, I think English explorer, maybe French. I'm not sure. Maybe French. Yeah. French. I guess that last name is a teller.
It's a giveaway.
The French.
He was exploring the region and he supposedly saw like a big snake creature with a horse head or something come out of the water. But that's actually like an apocryphal story. If you actually look at his stuff, he talks about like fish. And his odds are he just was describing like first off the description's completely different. He described something that's like 4 feet or 5 feet long and like as thick as his thigh, and it's probably like an alligator gar or something. Or not alligator gar. Yeah, long-nosed gar, something like that. Sturgeon. So
like, yeah, a lot of these
they're misquoted.
Yeah, just like for the Loch Ness monster, for example, the stories of like saints seeing it from a long time ago. If you actually look up the sources, they don't quite say what people want them to say.
Right. You know? With Loch Ness, there's Saint Columba, where but the thing is, if you look at his history, is he essentially sees monsters everywhere.
Yeah.
Like he fought like a giant whale at one point.
They're out to get him.
Yeah. They're really angry with these monsters hate Christians, man.
He stole something from the Monsterverse and they were on his tail.
He's the alpha.
So basically we have a bunch of old possible sightings from the past, which if you look into them, they're not quite as exciting, but that's kind of the premise. There's people mention large aquatic something in the water sometimes. That's kind of like your general premise. And then kind of the main thing that made this explode was this one photograph, just like the Surgeon's General photograph, which
Mm.
they show in this again, even
Yes.
though they
Even
know it's
though
not
it's
real.
fake.
And they kind of mentioned that, but like, why keep showing it then?
Well, the editing in this was really bad because at one point they start talking about plesiosaurs and they throw up an image of a mosasaur
Yeah.
skeleton
Well, that's all the same stuff.
for some reason, and I'm like, whoa! I was cringing so hard. I was like, oh. The editor was like, he's got to meet those deadlines here. Prehistoric sea monster. They're downloaded off of Wikimedia Commons.
Yeah.
Stock photo.
So you know a bit about this photograph, right?
Yes, the Mancy. I'm saying that right? Photograph.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they talk. There's several things that they do not mention in the episode.
Which are?
So first of all, the lady Mancy. I think she's died since then. She had cancer or something like that.
That's too bad.
But her story changed over time. There were contradictory details with later retellings that she did.
Yeah. That's how human memory works. You don't remember the original time you saw something. You remember yourself remembering it. So.
Right. Yeah. So in this version of events, so then I think in some versions she says that she was very ambivalent to taking the photo. She was like very emotionally calm while taking the photo, and then in this they say that she like collapsed to her knees and was like in complete fear and stuff. And there's several other details that change between accounts. So maybe she just exaggerated. That's not exactly like a debunking, but it happens with these stories.
I always thought it was odd she took one photo, even though she said it was there for like 5 minutes.
She said it was there for like 5 or 6 minutes. And another detail that it was kind of weird is she was either, I've heard conflicting accounts. She was either unwilling to show the location of where the photo was taken or had forgotten where it was taken.
I find the forgetting to be odd.
Yeah, that she was like, I have no idea where it was. Like, she's like, oh, we were on the American side of the lake, but I don't remember. Like, it's because that's a problem because we can't estimate the size of how big it was and stuff.
I'm a fisherman, and let me tell you, I know the spot of the lake where I've caught every fish that I've caught.
Right.
So if I was hanging out with a Loch Ness monster, I would know where that was.
Right.
Like,
well, yeah, you would know about this stuff. So it's weird that she didn't take multiple photos. Weird that she didn't record sort of the location. Interestingly, she does not provide the photo negative, like the actual.
Yeah, which is they never do.
They never do. And the thing is that the photograph is damaged. There's like scratches and all kinds of stuff. And I think I'll have to look it up again, but I think she didn't report it straight away. I think it was in like a photo album for several years, which damaged it even furthermore.
Do we know if the negative exists?
We don't know if the negative. She's never provided a negative, and then she's of course deceased, so we don't know. I've heard that it's plausible that she just lost it, but it's such an important picture.
Sure, context less, like removing that context and looking at the photo itself. Do you find the photo convincing of anything?
When you're really young, you find it really convincing because like how the neck's arched and stuff looks really, really cool, and it's looking away from you. It's very dramatic. But
when I was 9 years old, it was absolutely convincing.
Yeah, no, I kind of consider it one of like the most convincing cryptid images out there. Period.
Sure.
But
because it has the thing that you want in it. Right?
Yeah,
it has that swan-like, elegant moving down neck, and it has the hump.
Yeah, exactly. It has that very distinct, striking pose that you see in a lot of these lake monsters. But after seeing it now, like it's a very far away photo of a still object, and we don't have several pictures. At least with the surgeon's photograph, we have like 2 photos of it at least.
So, Skeptical Inquirer, I believe their hypothesis was that it was a log. Which I find pretty compelling. Pretty sure it's a log. I've been on the lake, and sometimes that happens. You see logs drifting by. That definitely is a real thing that happens on lakes. You see it all the time. And I mean, I don't think it's an animal. She doesn't even mention it like moving too much, right?
Yeah, she
So
doesn't really describe. She just says it floated up and then floated back down,
yeah.
which is a very kind of like you feel like you'd see the flippers moving or something like that. Um, I don't know.
So
Yeah,
so assuming that, I mean, everyone wants to say it's always a plesiosaur or mosasaur or whatever, but I mean those hypotheses seem less likely to me than it being any other kind of unknown aquatic creature.
right, like a big turtle or something.
Yeah, so like I mean, I assume there's some specially evolved turtle in there more than I would that there's a 35 million year old creature in the lake,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
even the hypothesis they sort of put forward in this episode, where they suggest that it's like a whale that was like trapped, like an inland whale.
Oh yeah, because
Um,
there's the lady in this video that is very committed to there being echolocation in the lake.
yeah, and I looked it up, and I couldn't really find much information on what happened with that echolocation information. I found like a Vice article that talked about it, um, but it just said like we haven't really been able to identify what that sound was.
It's
Um,
basically one person gathering this research. So
yeah,
I'm obviously not an expert on the validity of any of this research, but currently the scientific community is not, responding to it very well. So you
right.
can take
If
that
there were
as light.
inland like marine mammals, like if there was a, because there are like river dolphins and stuff
Yeah,
that do
definitely.
go up inland, but if there was one, I don't think there's been a case of like things trapped in a lake. Um, I know that in Russia there's like this really massive lake that has like seals that were trapped in there from when there was
Hmm.
an ocean. I don't think there's any examples of whales living in lakes or living
So
inland, like trapped inland
one
populations.
thing I was thinking, lakes are basically inverse islands, right?
Mm.
Like, right? Because there's like they're surrounded by land and they're separated from the ocean. So like I wouldn't a similar thing that happens on island evolution happen to lakes to large predators like this? Like they
Yeah,
would get smaller.
they would probably, yeah, there would probably be a like, I guess there might be island like dwarfism
That's
within
what I'm saying. Like
lakes.
because lakes are basically kind of like reverse islands.
Yeah, the animals would definitely change and evolve. Like like a dolphin or I get like I think they put forward the idea that it was like a beluga or something.
Yeah.
If a beluga got trapped in a population of belugas got trapped in a lake, you would expect them to be very different
Yeah,
than
they
belugas
have
outside.
less calories, and then they have less pressure to be larger,
Mm.
right? Because they have less predators of size. So you think that they would shrink over time.
I think so. Yeah, that would make sense. I just
So
don't know if there would be enough food to sustain a
oh
population
no,
like
there
that.
wouldn't. There wouldn't. But so the same thing with the plesiosaur or mosasaur or whatever a saur that they think that's in here, like they wouldn't be that big anymore. I don't think.
Right. If we're able to find what the pygmy sperm whales,
Yeah.
which are really small and incredibly rare, if we're able to find those in like the entire massive ocean, we should be able to find some inland whales in some lake in Vermont, like
Yeah.
evidence of them.
Yeah,
So
'cause
those things.
and so like, has there ever been an eDNA study? It's not mentioned, of course, in this.
I don't think so. No, I know there was one done in Loch Ness.
Yes, they
That
found
like they
eels.
found eels, but I don't know if Lake Champlain.
Yeah, I mean Lake Champlain does have sturgeon, and sturgeon get quite large.
Mm,
I mean they're like a really old species that gets gigantic, and they have no bones. They're like weird. Um, so if you see a sturgeon surfacing, which they don't do much because they're bottom feeders, it would be quite a strange sight. But
mhm.
nothing has this elongated gooseneck thing.
Yeah,
I mean that's
there's very few things in nature, or very few things that I know that have like the gooseneck besides like birds
yeah.
and stuff.
And I believe you did a video, right, on how you believe that a plesiosaur couldn't even make that neck shape.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is so what paleontologists have found is that it's plesiosaur necks. They're really flexible at the end, but they're not flexible at the base.
Hmm.
So they couldn't. So they could probably like curl their head around um, at the end, but they couldn't make the swan neck.
Yeah,
They're
because
just
like
bone. Their anatomy wouldn't allow it.
swans have that neck because they peck down and dig into the earth for worms and bugs and stuff.
Mm,
But like a plesiosaur doesn't do that, right? They glide in ambush.
right.
So they just wouldn't
And
need that.
I've heard people make the argument that like, oh, they evolved to look like a swan. So like at that point, you might as well just be advocating for a completely unknown animal.
Well, yeah,
Like
well,
why does it have to be a plesiosaur?
you're just continuing to add complexity because
Right.
you need so many steps, and adding another step doesn't make it more likely. It's
It's
just
the
more likely
same.
that that didn't happen.
Right. It's like the same problem that Monkelium bimbe and all that suffers, where they were based on.
Magellan Bimbe, if you don't know, of course, is a brontosaurus-like creature supposed to exist in the jungle. But,
Yeah, and in Africa, where they resemble something from pop culture at the time, like the reconstructions that have since become outdated. So we know that sauropods really didn't look like that necessarily, but
yeah, it's a Flintstones dinosaur.
it's a Flintstones so it's outdated, so it's stuck. And the Loch Ness monster suffers from this too, where paleontologists used to think plesiosaurs could do the swan neck, but they've since found that they can't. So it's sort of trapped in this outdated model where we know that the real animal doesn't look like that, but our artist depictions at the time look like that. So it's weird. It's kind of, you see it a lot of times with like living dinosaur
Yeah,
reconstructions.
it's a huge tale on these creatures. The fact that like when they look the way that the people of the time imagined them, which is like
Right.
kind of what I was saying, right? There's like this sense of like grief or longing for the wild, for the unknown, and then people just kind of see the shapes that they want to be out there.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So overall, the episode was kind of interesting. They had I apologize to the older shaggy gentleman. I don't remember his name.
Oh, the hunter, the monster
Yeah,
hunter.
he was apparently very invested in the creature, and
And
then
they
got
cut it's on the last day. They say on the last day.
yeah, they got him on this big boat, even though he's not really running the boat or anything. They just like have some people with a giant lure with the camera on it, and then they
That
just
fish lore that comes
yeah,
back later. They reuse that in later episodes, I think.
and basically they put him on the boat to just say things about it, even though he's not running the show at all. But he's like, local guy who loves the monster is here, and he's on the case.
They interviewed that old lady who was like, "Oh, I saw two of them climb
Yeah,
out near my window."
she said there was white ones, brown ones, green ones. She's very progressive about her view of Champ. Yeah, so like they cut the classic video of people pointing to the water.
Oh, I love those dramatic reenactments.
Yeah.
They have like the filter, the blue filter on
Yeah.
them. What's that?
Well,
Kids, get out of the water.
Yeah, or the people looking at the footage of the lure thing. There's the director's like point to it and say something, and then
and so they can get the commercial breaks where they're like, "Whoa, what's that?" And it goes.
Yeah, and then they said that they were out on the lake for an extended number of days. I thought that was an interesting way to phrase that. Why?
So say several days or something.
Was it 3 days or why lie about the amount of days, man?
It happens. I think you know what I think. Here's my theory. This might be slander. I think they go out there, they film the 10 minutes for the film for the show, and then go back in. That's my fan theory.
It was cold.
It was cold.
Nobody wants to be out there.
I really like the biologists and skeptics that they brought on. I think they actually gave some really good arguments.
They got someone from the Skeptical Inquirer. Another piece of technology I thought they had that was really like fantastic and great to see, and I thought if any technology was going to be able to capture a lake monster, it'd be this. It was the VHS player they showed.
Well, there was I did not see a VHS player.
It's in the first 3 or 4 minutes. They straight out have a VHS player.
Oh my
God. Thing, and I was like, I think a VHS player could do it. I believe in it. He's been down and out, but he was good back in the day, and I think he's ready for a comeback story.
There's I liked speaking of which, like the dated kind of stuff. I love the early CGI, especially for the reenactments where it's like
the plumpy flesh that looks like it's like filled up with air.
Yeah, I saw their little plesiosaur model and it was like, that's awful. Like it's not aerodynamic at all, or not aerodynamic, hydrodynamic. It's very lumpy and yeah, you wouldn't expect that.
Well, this is the thing that everybody says about cryptids, so it's kind of boring to mention, but like there had to, I mean, what's a healthy population is like 255, right?
Yeah, so she brings it up in this episode where it's like at the very least 50 individuals.
Yeah, I mean, like there's species that can reproduce asexually and have large offspring, but they're normally not large predators.
Right. That's the thing is, people have used this for megalania. Like they take the idea that some lizards, some like I think Komodo dragons can do parthenogenesis, which is where like the females reproduce by themselves or
Yeah,
something along those lines.
some frogs can and
And
stuff.
so what they do is like that's the reason why there's not too many of them is the females are just reproducing by themselves. But they take out the idea that this is a thing that they don't do all the time. They do need some genetic variability. And yeah, that people don't when people talk about cryptids, they typically don't talk about like population sizes and the genetics that are required with it.
Well,
Because
it's because that's not fun. What's fun is that there's a monster in the lake and it has a name.
oh, I know, but like
You know, that's
the thing
that's what
is
they like.
when you have like endangered species, there's a point where like a species is functionally extinct, where there's
Yeah.
just not enough of them because there's not enough genetic diversity. They're just going to get
like the white
horribly
rhino.
the white rhino. That's a yeah. Well, like that's the thing why like it can be with it can be with populations that have like dozens of people in it. They're still very
There
low.
are dozens of us.
Take us seriously.
We demand to be taken seriously.
Oh, stop booing. There's nothing wrong with it. There are dozens of us. Dozens!
Yeah, it's like I'm probably gonna. I hope I don't bring it up constantly, but that's the problem with cryptids. Is in order for them to not be seen all the time, there needs to be few of them, and the problem with there being few of them is that they don't have enough genetic diversity,
Yeah,
and
well,
it's not a stable population and stuff.
all the cryptids are large, charismatic megafauna. You know,
Right.
they're not like little finches or beetles, because we do find new finches and beetles, even ones that we thought were extinct and haven't been seen for a couple hundred years. But we
Right.
don't find new charismatic large megafauna.
Right. That's exactly the case. That's why.
Like, I mean, you know, everyone wants to bring up the coelacanth, but like, I hate that damn fish. I'm tired of hearing about it. Number one,
I'm sick of hearing about the coelacanth.
nobody
as well.
cares about the big ugly fish. But first of all, Western people forgot about it. The people who lived around it, they knew it was there. They just didn't care, right? And then a Western scientist saw it and was like, "Oh wow, cool!" But nobody was looking for it. Like it was not a big deal. It's an awesome find and everything. We can learn stuff from it, but it's not the same as a gigantic bipedal ape monster or I guess a plesiosaur or some kind of brontosaur in the jungle. It's just not the same thing.
Yeah, no, plesiosaur or not. Coelacanth is brought up literally every single cryptid discussion, especially with stuff that is prehistoric, and it neglects to mention that like we've since found fossils of coelacanths after the dinosaurs that kind of bridges that gap.
Yeah, the whole thing about it being a living fossil is stupid. That's just not how evolution works. Just because it's phenotype or it doesn't change doesn't mean it hasn't had evolutionary differences.
Right. Yeah, it's I'm sick of I am 100% with you. You were anti-megalodon and anti-coelacanth.
Yeah. We like possible reptiles in the water, maybe, but no coelacanths and no giant sharks.
Yeah.
Who's the guy who made the megalodon really fat?
Oh yeah, where we the tubby sort of submarine looking megalodon.
I like that. It's a good jab back at him. Oh, you want to see megalodons being real? Well, they were stupid looking. So deal with that.
Yeah, Champ is one of those things that it's so adorable. I think the idea is adorable that it makes me sad to kick it to the curb like this.
I would love there to be lake monsters. Of all the creatures that could exist out in the world, I think lake monsters are the ones I most want to be real.
Yeah.
And every time I go out fishing by the lake by myself, I think about lake monsters. I love them. It's just they don't love me back. Is the problem. And that's the heartbreaking thing about it.
Yeah. If there were a cryptid that I wanted to be real, it would have to be something dumb like that. Something dumb like Mothman or something. It's just giant humanoid Mothman.
I can't start talking about Mothman. I don't have. This podcast will go on forever.
Or one of or that big there's a South American creature with one eye and a mouth where its chest is and stuff.
So
Goofy.
so how would you rate this episode for Monster Quest? Like 1 out of 10.
I would rate it.
Graded on Monster Quest scale, not grading it against like Cosmos or Citizen Kane or something.
Oh,
Just
okay.
against Monster Quest's 1 episode's a 10. I don't know which one it is, and one's a 1. Where do you think this is going to be on the scale?
This rates on a scale of maybe like, this is a solid 7. I think this was a good start for a series, and it did what it had to do. It was good. It was short. It wasn't too bloated, and I liked how it gave a two sides of the argument kind of thing.
The Plesiosaur looked a little bloated in the CGI. I think I'd agree with you. I'd give it a 7, and the reason why is I think it was bold of them not to start with Bigfoot or Loch Ness monster.
Yeah, it's something obscure that not too many people have heard about.
They started with a B tier monster, and I respect that because I like the B tier monsters.
Right.
They got a good photo, right? Obviously, it's a log, but it's a really interesting looking log.
It's a beautiful log. It's an amazing log.
It's probably top 3 or 4 all-time logs. Like if I was starting a website, www.bestlogs.com, it would be in the header profile for sure. So it's up there in greatest logs. I don't know. The skeptical guy was there, gave a good take. They did their best on the PlayStation 2 graphics. I like that they found a shaggy, weird local guy to pretend to be the captain of this expedition.
Yeah, I like how they found a grandma to talk about it.
Also, the nice scientist lady, who I thought was very reasonable and fair, trying to explain how ecology works to these people. I like the shot of her just walking by the lake.
Yeah, she gave her explanation on like the windy side of the lake. Like, could we just do this in my office? Oh.
They didn't say any racist things about Native American myths, so that was nice.
That's right, they didn't. I was surprised.
I'm very thankful for that.
I was waiting for them to whip out like back in Native American times.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm worried as time goes on we're going to see less and less of those skeptics.
Yeah, so research of it was kind of like the first big weird paranormal kind of show back in the day with Leonard Nimoy betraying his Spock persona by sharing a bunch of nonsense and illogic.
In Search of, my dad showed me In Search of, and I got some choice words.
It's very old, but it was very cool back in the day.
Yeah.
So that show, actually, if you watch it now, I think is more reasonable than you would imagine.
Okay.
And Monster Quest, I think, is now more reasonable than people remember, just because of how bad it's gotten lately.
Yes.
So you have things like actual, factual, Megalodon is real episodes, or movies, I guess, events on History Channel. You have mermaids are real stories on History Channel, right? So like things have gotten so bad that you watch Monster Quest and you're like, that wasn't too bad.
Right. You go into it and you're like, all right, compared to Mermaid Body Found, this wasn't straight up lying to my face. Like the bar is so low nowadays.
I feel talked down to, but not lied to, and I'm okay with that. That's kind of bad.
It was good. It was definitely being very balanced. I'm just saying
we have an abusive relationship with History Channel.
Yes, I had to watch a full episode of Ancient Aliens, and it was painful. Like, this was fun, that was painful. It was hour and like 30 minutes or hour long. How it felt like forever, and it was so bloated and like, oh my gosh, you just stop thinking at a certain point.
So
if
people like this podcast, they might want to check out YouTube videos from Knowing Better. And then is it Alternative History, right? Was the other one?
Alternate History Hub.
They did a cool dive into Ancient Aliens. I believe Alternate History watched every episode.
He watched. Yeah, I was messaging him as he went along with it, and he watched every single episode, and he was he was in a lot of pain, I can tell.
Yeah, he probably needs some mental health and uplifting. So I feel bad for the guy.
Well, because like you have a. Am I allowed to say bullshit on this?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
This is America.
Okay. There's a certain level. You have a bullshit meter when you're watching
Yeah.
these kind of shows, and early on it goes off constantly. It's like that seismic earthquake machine. It's your when you hear somebody say
Bullshit.
and but as time goes on, you get worn down, and the needle stops moving as much. So you'll hear a claim, and like you won't react as crazy to it. You're
Well,
numb to it.
yeah,
Eventually.
your brain does that because it hurts your brain to look at things that don't make sense. Like sometimes if you see an optical illusion, like you feel like discomfort or pain trying to figure out what's happening, right? It's the same thing with bad narratives. You're like, wait, how does this fit together? And so eventually you just have to kind of accept it to ease your brain. That's cognitive easing, man. That's an actual psychological thing. Like,
and it's so bad that the first thing I thought of when you said that was a movie that I will not mention the name of.
Please. Yeah. So we have a rule on this podcast. We're not going to talk about a certain film trilogy because I go on a lot of different podcasts myself, and people often want me to talk about it. So I wanted to start this podcast with my boy Trey here, just so we could talk about other things.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Not going to talk about that thing.
You probably will know what we talk about. What we're dancing around.
Yeah.
Viewer.
I thought of so many clever ways to say what it was without saying it, but I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it.
What should I say? Photoshop gay people in the background, or
I'm cutting all this out.
Okay, we're cutting all this out. All this out.
So yeah, like let's say we were making a Monsterquest, right? History Channel's like, you know what? We want some credibility, so we're going to go hire a YouTuber and a comic writer guy.
Ooh.
Right? That's how we get credibility with the kids.
Yes.
I'm a millennial.
That is legitimately how you get the credibility.
I'm a millennial. I'm still pretty hip. I think you're a Zoomer, right? So we got two demographics together here. We got a coalition. We can make this happen.
You're the Malcolm in the Middle demographic. I'm the Fortnite demographic.
Well, I think we win this one, pal. Me and my boys. If you don't like it, too bad. Life's unfair.
Life is unfair.
So if they came to us, right? They're like, here's a couple $1 million. Here's a bunch of new camera equipment and a boat. Here's a shaggy local guy.
Shaggy local guy.
Yeah, and a nice old lady with a story. And we get to come up with a show. How would we do an episode about Champ? What would you want to do?
Oh God! See, this is the thing is I've become so disillusioned with cryptids. Where like I'm like, oh, there's nothing here.
Well, let's say it's not Champ. If we just were doing a show
okay.
about cryptids, what way would you want to talk about it? I guess we're doing it right now. But
I guess it would be more like cultural based. Like we would talk about how the monster affects the local community and stuff.
Yeah.
Like have people embrace the monster, what they think about it, do they actually believe it? Might be like more like ethnographic, like anthropology.
Yeah, that's what's interesting, right? Like, why do people still believe in Champ, right?
Right.
I guess we don't really have. We're just talking about Champ here specifically. Like, I don't really have any data like how many people actually believe in Champ. But I mean, like, if you grew up around that area, I'm sure it must have some cultural meaning to you.
Yeah.
You know, because there's like something. I'm not going to use the word spiritual, but there's something like a little extra about the lake because there's a story about a monster in it. And it just gives you a cultural touchstone. It gives you some kind of extra value to your home where you grew up in. And I think it's hard to say no to that. I know people aren't probably saying like an enthusiastic yes, I think there's a monster in there, but they're just not wanting to say no, there's not a monster. And I think that's talking about that is interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. I think like the idea of like how people like, because I know like the local baseball team has it as like their mascot and stuff, where I don't know, people like to have something special about their town.
I wish I played for that team. I played for the Thunderbirds, which I guess is a cryptid.
But, there's a Lost Tapes episode with the Thunderbirds.
Yeah. There's a story about the kid who gets lifted up by the bird, right, and carried off.
Yeah. I think that shows up in a later Monsterquest episode.
That story might have happened.
Yeah, I
There's
could
like
see that.
there's enough reports in that one where I'll give that a maybe, I guess.
I know that, like, see, I went to West Virginia during the pandemic. That we had the trip planned out. I know that probably wasn't the smartest thing. We wore masks and all that. Anyways, I talked to people in like Flatwoods and in Point Pleasant, and this one like chain smoker guy, like he saw me taking a picture of the Mothman statue in the center of
Hmm.
town, and he just like he stopped his car, and he was like an elder. He was kind of old. He was probably like 60 or 70 something, and he was like, hey you, hey, he just rolled down his window. He's like, come here, and I was like, oh hello, and I was like kind of scared. Um, and he's like, what do you want to know my 2 cents about that statue? And as he was talking to me, he like lit up a cig. He was
Hell
like,
yeah, I did.
and he's like, you know what? Say what you will about him. He put us on the map. That's all I can say. He put us on the map.
He put us on the map. That's what I'm saying though, right? Like it gives you a bit of cultural identity.
Yeah, yeah. And that guy was nice. He's like, you like pot? You like what do you say? You like pottery? And I was like, no. And he was like, well, there's a store over there owned by my old friend Jeb. He sells pottery. And I was like, oh, okay. It was very odd.
I was hoping he'd be like, hey kids, you like Mothman? You're like, oh yeah, sir. And you walk up to him and he just has a coat with a bunch of Mothman photos and
Holy
paraphernalia.
crap! That'd be awesome. I'd buy like all that kind of stuff.
Definitely you would.
Little keychain with little Mothman.
That's
on
what he
it.
does. Every day he gets up, puts on his coat. Where do people get these trench coats? You just like Google trench coat for selling stuff on the street? Do they have a name?
Yeah, I don't know. Like vendor merchant trench coat.
I should get me one of these trench coats. You
You
know,
come
a
in,
lot
you look like Neo.
of people are trying to get into making money through weird stock memes or crypto nonsense. I'm gonna go old school. I'm gonna get into the trench coat selling stuff.
Yeah,
out of
sell
business.
sell your comics in the
Yeah.
trench coat.
Hey kids, you want to learn about science?
You want some Dune? Oh wait!
Yeah.
Oh crap! Oh shit!
I can't sell. I can't sell the Dune book. I will get sued.
Get out of here!
Brian Herbert, if you're listening to this, I'm not selling Dune books out of trench coats on the street to children. I'm sorry. I've been accused of too much.